Maya Chen walked through the front doors of Riverside High School with her head held high, even though her stomach was doing backflips. Moving to a new town during senior year wasn't exactly her idea of fun, but her father's job transfer had left her family no choice. She clutched her schedule in one hand and her worn leather messenger bag in the other, trying to look more confident than she felt. The hallways buzzed with the familiar sounds of teenagers catching up after summer break, lockers slamming, and sneakers squeaking on polished floors. Maya had done this dance before at 3 other schools, thanks to her father's career in the military. She knew the routine: find your classes, sit in the back, keep your head down, and hope to blend in until graduation. But blending in had never been Maya's strong suit. Her long, silky black hair cascaded down to her waist, a striking contrast against her pale skin. Her grandmother had always told her that her hair was her crown, and Maya had never cut it shorter than her shoulders. Today, she'd braided it carefully and pinned it up in an elegant twist, hoping to make a good first impression. Her first class was AP Literature with Mrs. Henderson, a kind-looking woman in her 50s who welcomed Maya warmly and introduced her to the class. Maya took an empty seat near the middle of the room, noting the curious stares and whispered conversations that seemed to follow her entrance. This was normal, she told herself. New students always attracted attention. During lunch, Maya found an empty table in the corner of the cafeteria and pulled out her homemade sandwich and thermos of green tea. She was used to eating alone on her first days at new schools. As she ate, she observed the social dynamics around her. The jocks clustered near the windows, the theater kids animated at their corner table, and the academic achievers spread their homework across another section. Then there was the table that seemed to command attention without trying. 3 girls sat there like queens holding court, their designer clothes and perfectly styled hair announcing their status to anyone who cared to look. Maya had encountered their type at every school she'd attended. The popular crowd, the ones who decided who belonged and who didn't. The leader was clearly Brittany Walsh, a tall blonde with sharp features and calculating blue eyes. She wore expensive jewelry and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. To her right sat Jessica Martinez, a brunette with an infectious laugh that seemed genuine when directed at friends, but hollow when aimed at outsiders. The third member of their trio was Chloe Davidson, a petite redhead with freckles who seemed to hang on Brittany's every word. Maya had no interest in impressing them or joining their circle. She'd learned long ago that trying to fit in with the popular crowd was more trouble than it was worth. She preferred to focus on her studies, maintain her grades, and count down the days until graduation, when she could leave for college and finally put down roots somewhere. After lunch, Maya had chemistry class with Mr. Peterson, an enthusiastic teacher who assigned lab partners alphabetically. She found herself paired with David Kim, a quiet Asian-American boy who seemed relieved to have a partner who actually wanted to focus on the experiment rather than gossip about weekend plans. "You're new here, right?" David asked as they measured chemicals for their assignment. "Yeah, just moved from Colorado," Maya replied, carefully adding drops of solution to their test tube. "Cool. How are you liking it so far?" Maya shrugged. "It's fine. Pretty similar to my last school." David nodded understandingly. "Well, if you need someone to show you around or help you find your classes, just let me know. I know how tough it can be being new." Maya smiled genuinely for the first time that day. "Thanks. I appreciate that." As the days passed, Maya settled into her routine. She excelled in her classes, particularly in English and history, where her well-read background and thoughtful insights impressed her teachers. She joined the school newspaper and volunteered to tutor struggling students in math. Slowly, she began to make acquaintances, if not quite friends yet. But she also began to notice that Brittany's group was paying attention to her in ways that made her uncomfortable. She caught them staring during lunch, whispering when she passed in the hallways and laughing in that particular way that suggested she was the subject of their conversation. The first direct confrontation came on a Friday afternoon. Maya was at her locker gathering books for the weekend when Brittany appeared beside her with Jessica and Chloe flanking her like bodyguards. "So, you're the new girl everyone's talking about," Brittany said, her voice sweet but with an underlying edge. Maya continued organizing her books, not looking up. "I guess so." "Your hair is really long," Jessica observed, reaching out as if to touch it before Maya stepped away. "Thanks," Maya said simply, closing her locker and turning to face them. "It must take forever to wash and style," Chloe added with a giggle that didn't reach her eyes. "Not really. I'm used to it." Brittany tilted her head, studying Maya like a scientist examining a specimen. "You know, most girls our age have more modern hairstyles. That look is very traditional." Maya felt a familiar prickle of irritation, but kept her expression neutral. "I like it this way." "Oh, I'm sure you do," Brittany said with a patronizing smile. "It's just that if you want to fit in here, you might want to consider updating your look. We could help you with that." "I'm fine, thanks," Maya replied, adjusting her bag strap and preparing to leave. "Are you sure?" Jessica pressed. "We know all the best salons in town. We could even pay for it." The offer hung in the air like a trap, waiting to be sprung. Maya had heard similar offers before at other schools, always delivered with smiles that never quite reached the eyes. She knew better than to accept charity from girls like these. "I appreciate the offer, but no thanks," Maya said firmly. Brittany's smile faltered for just a moment, revealing a flash of something harder underneath. "Okay, suit yourself, but don't say we didn't try to help." As Maya walked away, she heard Chloe whisper loudly enough for her to hear, "Some people just don't want help, I guess." The weekend passed quietly. Maya spent Saturday helping her mother unpack the last of their boxes and Sunday studying for upcoming tests. She tried not to think about the encounter with Brittany's group, but something about the way Brittany had looked at her left her feeling unsettled. Monday morning brought Maya's first real taste of what Brittany Walsh was capable of when she didn't get her way. Maya arrived at school to find her locker decorated with printed photos of outdated hairstyles from the 1970s and 1980s, taped up with messages like "Time for an update" and "Welcome to the 21st century." Maya calmly removed each photo and threw them away, ignoring the snickers from passing students who had clearly witnessed the prank. David Kim stopped by her locker between classes. "That's messed up," he said, shaking his head. "Want me to report it?" "It's fine," Maya replied, though her jaw was tight with controlled anger. "Just pictures." But it wasn't just pictures, and they both knew it. It was a declaration of war from girls who weren't used to being told no. The harassment escalated throughout the week. Maya found hair ties left in obvious places with notes suggesting she try something new. During lunch, she overheard Jessica telling other students about some people who don't know how to take advice. In English class, Chloe made a presentation about personal grooming in different cultures that was clearly aimed at Maya, complete with slides about how certain hairstyles could be seen as refusing to assimilate. Maya endured it all with the patience she'd developed from years of military life. She'd learned that bullies eventually got bored if you didn't give them the reaction they wanted. She focused on her studies, continued volunteering as a tutor, and began writing articles for the school newspaper that showcased her intelligence and insight. But Brittany Walsh was not the type of person who got bored easily, especially when her authority was being challenged by someone she saw as beneath her social status. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon in late September. Maya was staying after school to work on a chemistry project with David when she realized she'd left her notes in her English classroom. She told David she'd be right back and walked alone through the nearly empty hallways toward Mrs. Henderson's room. The classroom was dark, but Maya could see her notebook on her desk through the open door. She flicked on the lights and grabbed her notes, then turned to leave. That's when she saw them. Brittany, Jessica, and Chloe stood in the doorway blocking her exit. But they weren't alone. Two senior boys Maya didn't recognize flanked them, both wearing Letterman jackets and expressions that suggested they weren't there to chat. "Well, well," Brittany said, stepping into the room. "Look what we found." Maya clutched her notebook tighter, her heart rate picking up. "Excuse me, I need to get back to the lab." "Actually, I don't think you're going anywhere just yet," Brittany said, nodding to the boys, who moved to close the classroom door behind them. Maya's military upbringing had taught her to assess threats quickly. 5 against 1, no easy exit, isolated location. This wasn't good. "What do you want?" Maya asked, proud that her voice remained steady despite the fear growing in her chest. "We want to help you," Jessica said with fake sweetness, "like we offered before." "We've been talking, and we really think you need a makeover," Chloe added, pulling something from her purse that made Maya's blood run cold. Scissors. Professional hairdressing scissors that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "We're going to give you a more modern look," Brittany announced, moving closer. "Something that actually fits in at this school." Maya backed against the blackboard, her mind racing. She could try to fight, but she was outnumbered. She could scream, but the hallways were mostly empty, and the few teachers still around were too far away to hear. "You can't do this," Maya said, her voice finally showing the fear she felt. "This is assault." "This is helping," Brittany corrected. "And who's going to believe you anyway? You're nobody here. We're honor students, cheerleaders, student council members. Our parents donate to this school." One of the boys grabbed Maya's arms while the other stood guard at the door. Maya struggled, but he was much stronger than she was. Jessica and Chloe held her hair while Brittany approached with the scissors. "Hold still," Brittany commanded. "We're just going to take off a few inches, maybe a few feet." Maya felt the cold metal of the scissors against her neck as Brittany gathered her hair in one hand. Years of her grandmother's teachings about dignity and strength echoed in her mind, but they felt distant now, overwhelmed by fear and helplessness. The first cut was devastating. Maya watched 18 inches of her beautiful black hair fall to the floor in one thick rope. Brittany held it up like a trophy while Jessica took photos with her phone. "Oops," Brittany said with mock concern. "I think I cut more than I meant to. Better even it out." More cuts followed, each one more uneven than the last. Maya's hair, which had taken years to grow and had been her pride and joy, lay scattered on the classroom floor like fallen leaves. What remained on her head was a choppy, uneven mess that looked like it had been cut by a blind person. Throughout the ordeal, Maya remained silent. She didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Her face was a mask of controlled fury that seemed to unnerve even Brittany. When they were finished, Brittany stepped back to admire her work. "There! Much better. Very edgy." The boys released Maya's arms, and she immediately reached up to feel what was left of her hair. The longest pieces barely touched her shoulders, while other sections were cut nearly to her scalp. "Now you look like you belong in this century," Jessica said, still taking photos. "Clean up this mess," Brittany ordered, gesturing to the hair on the floor. "We wouldn't want anyone to think there was some kind of incident." They filed out of the classroom, leaving Maya alone with the evidence of what they'd done to her. She stared at her reflection in the dark window, seeing a stranger looking back. Her hands shook as she gathered up the pieces of her hair, each strand a reminder of what had been taken from her. But as she collected the last of her hair and threw it in the trash, something changed in Maya's expression. The fear was gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. She pulled out her phone and took several photos of herself, documenting the damage. Then she walked back to the chemistry lab, where David was waiting with their project materials spread across the table. Maya, what took you so long? I was starting to worry. His voice trailed off as he saw her appearance, his eyes widening in shock. We need to talk, Maya said quietly, her voice carrying an undertone that David had never heard before. And then we need to make some phone calls. David stared at her mutilated hair, understanding immediately what had happened. Maya, I'm so sorry we have to report this. Maya smiled then, but it wasn't the kind of smile that suggested happiness. It was the smile of someone who had just declared war. Oh, we will, she said. But first, I need to tell you exactly who Maya Chen really is, because those girls made a very big mistake today. They assumed I was just another quiet new girl who would take their abuse and stay silent. She pulled her phone from her pocket and showed David a contact labeled, Dad, General Chen, Fort Bragg. They have no idea what they just started. David Kim stared at Maya's phone screen, his mouth falling open as he read the contact information. General Chen, Fort Bragg. The implications hit him immediately. Your dad is a general? He whispered. Maya nodded, tucking her phone back into her pocket. Two-star general, actually. He's currently overseeing cyber warfare training at Fort Bragg, but he's scheduled to transfer to the Pentagon next month. She touched what remained of her hair absently. I've been trying to keep that quiet because I just wanted to be a normal teenager for once. Maya, this is huge. They assaulted you. David gestured helplessly at her butchered hair. They made their choice, Maya said quietly. Now I'm going to make mine. The chemistry lab fell silent, except for the hum of the ventilation system. Maya pulled out her phone again and began typing rapidly. What are you doing? David asked. Documenting everything. Timestamps, photos, witness statements. She looked up at him. You were here when I left to get my notes. You can verify that I was gone for 45 minutes, which is far longer than it should have taken to walk to Mrs. Henderson's classroom and back. David nodded eagerly. Absolutely. And I can testify that you were visibly upset when you returned and that your hair was completely different. Maya continued typing. I'm also sending photos to my older brother Marcus. He's a lawyer with the JAG Corps at Fort Leavenworth. He specializes in cases involving military families and civil rights violations. Civil rights violations. Assault based on ethnic appearance and cultural practices. Maya explained matter-of-factly. My hair length is connected to my Chinese heritage. My grandmother taught me that cutting a woman's hair without permission is not just assault, it's a form of cultural violence. Marcus has prosecuted several cases involving similar incidents. David watched in amazement as Maya transformed from victim to strategist before his eyes. Her military upbringing was showing now, the calm precision with which she approached problems and developed solutions. There's something else, Maya continued. Something those girls don't know about me. She pulled up another contact on her phone. My mother isn't just a military spouse. She's Dr. Sarah Chen, and she's currently working as a civilian consultant for the Department of Education on anti-bullying initiatives in schools. Your mom is an expert on bullying? She has a PhD in educational psychology and specializes in peer harassment and institutional responses to student-on-student violence. She's written papers on the subject and testified before Congress twice. Maya's smile was grim. She's been looking for a high-profile case to demonstrate how schools often fail to protect vulnerable students. As Maya spoke, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen and answered immediately. Hi, Mom. Yes, I know it's late. I need you to sit down because I have something important to tell you. David listened as Maya calmly recounted the events of the past few weeks, culminating in the assault in Mrs. Henderson's classroom. Her voice never wavered, never broke. She spoke like someone giving a military briefing, precise and professional. Yes, I have photos. Yes, I documented the timeline. David Kim witnessed the before and after. She paused, listening. No, Mom, I'm okay. I'm angry, but I'm okay. Can you conference call Marcus? I think we need to discuss our options. 20 minutes later, Maya sat in the empty chemistry lab with her phone on speaker, participating in a three-way call that would have terrified Brittany Walsh if she could have heard it. This is textbook assault and battery, Marcus Chen's voice crackled through the phone speaker. His tone was professional but carried an undercurrent of rage. The fact that multiple perpetrators were involved elevates it to conspiracy charges, and the cultural element adds federal hate crime potential. The school's liability is enormous, Dr. Chen added. This happened on school property during school hours, with no supervision present. The perpetrators essentially held Maya prisoner in a classroom. Any competent attorney would pursue both criminal and civil action. What kind of civil action? David whispered. Maya looked at him. Monetary damages, pain and suffering, emotional distress, violation of civil rights. Marcus, what are we looking at in terms of potential financial consequences for the families involved? Conservative estimate? 6 figures per family, possibly more if we can demonstrate a pattern of harassment that the school failed to address. And that's just the civil side. Criminal assault charges could result in jail time, especially for the older students involved. Dr. Chen's voice came through clearly. Maya, I want you to know that I'm proud of how you've handled this. You've done exactly what I teach other young people to do. Document everything, preserve evidence, and report through proper channels. But now we need to escalate this appropriately. What's our first step? Maya asked. I'm calling Principal Morrison right now, Dr. Chen replied. And I'm also contacting the district superintendent and the school board chairman. This needs to be addressed at the highest levels immediately. I'll start preparing preliminary legal documents, Marcus added. Maya, I need you to write down everything you can remember about the incident while it's still fresh. Include dates, times, exact quotes if you can remember them, and descriptions of everyone involved. Already working on it, Maya said, holding up her notebook where she'd been writing throughout the call. There's one more thing, Dr. Chen said. I'm going to recommend that your father contact his public affairs office. This kind of attack on a military family might warrant media attention, especially given the current focus on anti-bullying legislation. David's eyes widened. Media attention? Maya nodded grimly. Mom's right. Sometimes public pressure is the only thing that makes schools take real action, and when the victim is the daughter of a general and the attack has cultural and potentially racial undertones, well, that's the kind of story that gets people's attention. The call ended with plans for Maya's parents to drive up that evening and meet with school administrators first thing Friday morning. Maya would stay home from school on Friday while the investigation began. As Maya packed up her things, David couldn't help but ask, Aren't you worried about what Brittany and her friends might do when they find out you're fighting back? Maya looked at him with an expression that reminded him she was the daughter of a career military officer. David, they had the chance to apologize when they first started harassing me. They had the chance to back down when I ignored their pranks. Instead, they chose to escalate to physical assault. She zipped up her bag. Now they're going to learn what happens when you attack someone who actually knows how to fight back. Friday morning, Maya sat in Principal Morrison's office alongside both her parents. Her father, General James Chen, wore his dress uniform, his chest decorated with ribbons that spoke of a distinguished military career. Her mother, Dr. Sarah Chen, carried a briefcase full of documentation and research. Principal Morrison, a thin man in his 50s who usually projected authority, looked decidedly uncomfortable as he faced two of the most intimidating parents he'd ever encountered. I want to assure you that we take these allegations very seriously, Morrison began. Allegations? General Chen's voice could have frozen water. Principal Morrison, my daughter has photographic evidence of the assault, witness testimony, and a detailed timeline. These aren't allegations. These are facts. Dr. Chen opened her briefcase and placed a thick folder on the principal's desk. This contains documentation of every incident Maya reported starting from her second day at this school. It also includes relevant case law regarding school liability in assault cases and federal guidelines on addressing harassment based on cultural characteristics. Principal Morrison flipped through the folder, his face growing paler with each page. I had no idea the situation had escalated to this level. That's precisely the problem, Dr. Chen replied coolly. Maya attempted to handle this harassment without involving administration, hoping it would resolve itself. Instead, your students felt emboldened to commit what amounts to a hate crime on school property. Now let's talk about solutions, General Chen said, leaning forward. My daughter's attorney is prepared to file both criminal and civil charges against the 5 students involved. However, Maya has expressed a preference for handling this through the school system first, provided the response is appropriate to the severity of the assault. Principal Morrison nodded eagerly. Of course. What kind of response would be appropriate? Dr. Chen pulled out another document. Immediate suspension for all 5 students pending a full investigation. Mandatory counseling for cultural sensitivity and anger management. Public apology to Maya and the school community. And implementation of a comprehensive anti-bullying program that I will personally oversee. Additionally, General Chen added, the students' parents will be required to pay for professional hair restoration treatments for Maya, as well as counseling costs for the trauma they've inflicted. And if any of the students or their families attempt retaliation against Maya, Dr. Chen continued, we will immediately pursue full criminal and civil prosecution without further negotiation. Principal Morrison was scribbling notes frantically. Yes, of course. I'll call the students to the office immediately. One more thing. Maya spoke for the first time since entering the office. I want this meeting recorded and documented. I want Brittany, Jessica, Chloe, and the 2 boys who helped them to understand exactly what consequences their actions have triggered. An hour later, Brittany Walsh sat in the same chair Maya had occupied, but her experience was vastly different. Gone was the confident queen bee who had ruled the school's social hierarchy. In her place sat a pale, frightened teenager who was beginning to understand the magnitude of her mistake. Principal Morrison had already explained the assault charges, the potential civil litigation, and the immediate suspension. Now he was detailing the additional consequences. Your parents have been contacted and are on their way to school. The police will be interviewing all involved parties this afternoon. And Miss Chen's family has provided us with video evidence from the school's security cameras that clearly shows all 5 of you entering and leaving Mrs. Henderson's classroom during the time of the assault. Brittany's voice was barely a whisper. Video evidence? The hallway cameras captured everything, Principal Morrison confirmed. Your entry into the classroom, the 40-minute duration of your stay, and your exit. Miss Chen's condition before and after is clearly documented. Jessica Martinez was crying openly in the chair next to Brittany. We didn't mean for this to happen. It was just supposed to be a prank. Cutting off someone's hair without permission is not a prank, Principal Morrison said sternly. It's assault. And doing it as part of a coordinated attack by 5 people makes it conspiracy to commit assault. Chloe Davidson, who had seemed so confident when wielding the scissors, now looked like she might be sick. What's going to happen to us? That depends on several factors, Principal Morrison replied. Miss Chen's family has graciously agreed to consider alternatives to immediate criminal prosecution if certain conditions are met. However, those conditions are non-negotiable. He handed each girl a document. Full admission of guilt, public apology, mandatory counseling, community service, and financial restitution for Miss Chen's medical and psychological treatment costs. Any violation of these terms, any attempt at retaliation, and criminal charges will be filed immediately. The 2 senior boys who had helped with the assault received similar ultimatums when they were called to the office. Both athletes faced additional consequences from their sports teams and potential loss of college scholarship opportunities. By the end of the day, news of the incident had spread throughout Riverside High. But the story that circulated wasn't the one Brittany had intended. Instead of Maya being humiliated and ostracized, she was seen as someone who had faced down the school's biggest bullies and won. Students who had been afraid to speak up against Brittany's clique suddenly found their voices. Teachers who had suspected bullying but lacked concrete evidence came forward with their observations. The perfect facade that Brittany and her friends had maintained crumbled completely. Maya returned to school on Monday morning wearing a stylish, short haircut that a professional stylist had created from the damage Brittany had done. Rather than looking defeated, she looked fierce and confident. The choppy, uneven mess had been transformed into an edgy, modern style that actually suited her face better than her long hair ever had. David Kim met her at her locker. "How are you feeling?" Maya smiled, and this time it was genuine. "Honestly, better than I've felt in years. I spent so much time trying to stay invisible, trying not to make waves, but sometimes making waves is exactly what you need to do." Throughout the day, students approached Maya to offer support and share their own experiences with Brittany's bullying. Several teachers made a point of checking on her, and even some of the popular students who had never spoken to her before expressed their disapproval of what had happened. At lunch, Maya sat with David and a growing group of students who seemed drawn to her newfound confidence. Among them was Sarah Kim, David's younger sister, who had been afraid to eat lunch anywhere but the library because of Brittany's group. "I can't believe you stood up to them," Sarah said admiringly. "Nobody's ever done that before." "Everyone deserves to feel safe at school," Maya replied. "Nobody should have to hide in the library during lunch because they're afraid of bullies." As if summoned by their conversation, Brittany Walsh appeared at their table. But this was a different Brittany than the one who had terrorized students just days before. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and her confident demeanor completely gone. "Maya," she said quietly, "can I talk to you?" The entire table fell silent, watching the interaction with fascination. Maya studied Brittany for a moment, then nodded toward an empty corner of the cafeteria. They walked away from the crowd, and Brittany immediately broke down. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go that far." Maya's expression remained neutral. "But you did mean to humiliate me. You did mean to hurt me. You just didn't expect there to be consequences." Brittany nodded miserably. "My parents are furious. They're making me pay for your hair treatment and counseling out of my college fund. I'm suspended for 2 weeks, and I have to do community service at a women's shelter. The whole cheerleading squad voted me off the team. And Jessica and Chloe? They're not talking to me anymore. They blame me for dragging them into this mess." Brittany wiped her eyes with a tissue. "I lost everything, Maya. Everything I worked for since freshman year." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Brittany, do you know why I never fought back when you started harassing me?" Brittany shook her head. "Because I hoped you would realize on your own that what you were doing was wrong. I hoped that if I didn't give you the reaction you wanted, you'd get bored and move on to someone else." Maya's voice hardened. "Instead, you escalated to physical assault. You held me down and mutilated me because I refused to submit to your bullying." I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't grow my hair back, Brittany. Sorry doesn't erase the fear and humiliation you put me through. Sorry is just a word you're saying now because you're facing consequences." Brittany cried harder, but Maya wasn't finished. "But here's what's going to happen now. You're going to complete every single requirement my family has set for you. You're going to apologize publicly to everyone in this school who has ever been afraid of you. And you're going to use this experience to become a better person, or you're going to face the full legal consequences of what you did." Maya turned to walk away. then paused. "And Brittany? If you or anyone else ever tries to retaliate against me or any other student in this school, remember that my father is a 2-star general, my brother is a military attorney, and my mother is a nationally recognized expert on school bullying. This was me being merciful." As Maya walked back to her table, leaving Brittany standing alone in the corner of the cafeteria, she realized something important had changed inside her. For years, she had tried to avoid conflict, to blend in and stay invisible. But sometimes, being visible was exactly what the situation required. Sometimes, the only way to stop a bully was to show them that you were stronger than they were. And sometimes, striking back wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. 3 weeks after the assault, Riverside High School was a completely different place. The changes started small, but rippled outward like stones thrown into still water, affecting every aspect of the school's social dynamics. Maya Chen walked through the hallways with a confidence she had never possessed before. Her professionally styled short hair framed her face perfectly, and she carried herself with the poise of someone who had faced her worst fear and emerged victorious. But more importantly, she had become a symbol of hope for students who had spent years living in fear of the school's bullying culture. The first major change came during the mandatory school assembly that Principal Morrison called to address the recent events. Maya sat in the front row with her parents, watching as the entire student body filed into the gymnasium. The usual chatter and laughter was subdued, replaced by a tension that everyone could feel. Principal Morrison took the podium, his expression grave. 3 weeks ago, a serious assault occurred on our campus. 5 students attacked a classmate in what can only be described as a coordinated act of violence and intimidation. His voice echoed through the silent gymnasium. Today, those students will publicly apologize for their actions and announce the consequences they will face. One by one, Brittany Walsh, Jessica Martinez, Chloe Davidson, and the 2 senior boys who had helped them took the stage. The transformation in their appearances was striking. Gone were the designer clothes and confident expressions. They looked like what they truly were. Teenagers who had made terrible choices and were now facing adult consequences. Brittany spoke first, her voice barely audible through the microphone. 3 weeks ago, I led an attack on Maya Chen that resulted in her being physically assaulted and humiliated. I want everyone in this school to understand that what we did was not a prank, not a joke, and not acceptable behavior. She took a shaky breath. Maya Chen did nothing to deserve what happened to her. She was targeted because she was new, because she was different, and because I thought I could get away with hurting her. The gymnasium was completely silent. Students who had witnessed Brittany's reign of terror for years watched in amazement as their former Queen Bee publicly admitted her crimes. Jessica Martinez stepped forward next, tears streaming down her face. I want to apologize, not just to Maya, but to everyone in this school who has ever been afraid to speak up because of what we might do to them. We created an atmosphere of fear, and that was wrong. Chloe Davidson's apology was perhaps the most shocking. The girl who had seemed so sweet and innocent when she wasn't wielding scissors spoke about the pressure she felt to participate in the bullying to maintain her social status. I thought being popular was worth hurting other people, she said. I was wrong, and I'm ashamed of who I became. The 2 senior boys, Marcus Thompson and Tyler Reed, faced additional consequences beyond the others. Both had lost their spots on the football team and their college scholarship opportunities. Tyler's voice broke as he spoke about how one moment of poor judgment had cost him his future plans. When all 5 had spoken, Principal Morrison returned to the podium. These students will serve 6 months of community service at local organizations that support victims of bullying and violence. They will attend mandatory counseling sessions and participate in educational programs about the impact of their actions. Additionally, They have been permanently banned from all leadership positions, sports teams, and extracurricular activities for the remainder of their time at Riverside High. But the most significant announcement came next. Effective immediately, Riverside High School will implement a comprehensive anti-bullying program developed by Dr. Sarah Chen, an expert in educational psychology and the mother of the student who was attacked. This program will include peer mediation training, anonymous reporting systems, and mandatory education for all students and staff. Maya felt a surge of pride as she watched her mother stand to acknowledge the applause. Dr. Chen had spent the past 3 weeks working with the school district to create a program that would prevent future incidents like Maya's assault. After the assembly, the real work began. Maya found herself in an unexpected position. Students who had never spoken to her before began seeking her out, not just to offer support, but to ask for advice. She discovered that her experience had given her a unique perspective on standing up to bullying that other students desperately needed. During lunch, Maya's table had grown to include a diverse group of students who had found their voices in the aftermath of Brittany's downfall. There was David Kim, of course, but also his sister Sarah, a group of theater kids who had been targeted for being weird, several students from various ethnic backgrounds who had faced similar cultural harassment, and even some former members of Brittany's extended social circle who were relieved to be free from the pressure to participate in cruel behavior. "Maya," said Jennifer Walsh, a junior who had been forced to do Brittany's homework to avoid being targeted. "I wanted to thank you for what you did. I know it was horrible for you, but you saved so many of us from years more of this." Maya looked around the table at faces that had been marked by fear just weeks earlier, now animated with hope and genuine friendship. "I didn't do it to save anyone," she said honestly. "I did it because I was angry and I had the resources to fight back. But I'm glad it helped." "That's what makes it even better," said Carlos Mendez, a sophomore who had been bullied for his accent. "You didn't do it for glory or attention. You did it for justice." The conversation was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Henderson, Maya's English teacher, approached their table with a warm smile. "Maya, I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I wanted to let you know about an opportunity that's come up." She handed Maya a pamphlet. "The State Department of Education is looking for student representatives to speak at a conference about anti-bullying initiatives. Your mother recommended you for the position." Maya examined the pamphlet, which detailed a conference where students, educators, and policymakers would discuss effective strategies for preventing school violence. "You want me to speak publicly about what happened?" "Only if you're comfortable with it," Mrs. Henderson assured her. "But Maya, your experience and the way you handled it could help students across the entire state. You've shown that it's possible to stand up to bullies and create real change." Maya looked around the table at her friends, all of whom were nodding encouragingly. David Kim spoke for the group. "Maya, you've already changed this school. Maybe it's time to change the state." 3 months later, Maya stood at a podium in the state capitol building, addressing an audience of educators, parents, students, and legislators. Her short hair had grown out slightly, styled in a way that looked both professional and youthful. She wore a simple blue dress that her mother had chosen, and around her neck was a small pendant that her grandmother had given her years ago, a symbol of strength and resilience. "My name is Maya Chen," she began, her voice clear and confident. "6 months ago, I was just another military kid trying to survive her senior year at a new school. I kept my head down, focused on my studies, and hoped to graduate without incident." She paused, scanning the audience. "Then 5 of my classmates decided that I needed to be taught a lesson about fitting in." The audience was completely silent as Maya recounted her story, from the initial harassment through the assault and its aftermath. She spoke without emotion about the fear she had felt, the humiliation of having her hair forcibly cut, and the decision to fight back using every resource available to her. "I want to be clear about something," Maya said, approaching the climax of her speech. I didn't win because I was stronger than my attackers. I didn't win because I was more popular or better connected socially. I won because my family had taught me that I had value, that I deserved to be treated with respect, and that there are systems in place to protect people like me when those systems are properly utilized. She gestured to her parents in the audience. My father's military career taught me about chain of command and proper reporting procedures. My mother's expertise in educational psychology gave me the knowledge to document harassment effectively. My brother's legal training helped me understand my rights and the consequences my attackers would face. Maya took a breath and continued. But not every student has access to these resources. Not every teenager knows how to document bullying or whom to contact for help. Not every family has the knowledge or connections to fight back against institutional indifference. The audience was leaning forward now, hanging on her every word. That's why programs like the one we've implemented at Riverside High are so important. We've created anonymous reporting systems so students can get help without fear of retaliation. We've trained peer mediators to intervene before situations escalate to violence. We've educated our entire community about the warning signs of harassment and the proper responses. Maya pulled out a folder of papers. In the 4 months since our program was implemented, reported incidents of bullying at Riverside High have decreased by 73%. More importantly, student surveys show that 89% of our students now feel safe at school, compared to only 41% before the program began. The statistics drew murmurs of approval from the audience, but Maya wasn't finished. The 5 students who attacked me faced serious consequences for their actions. 2 lost college scholarships. All 5 were suspended and required to perform community service. Their families paid thousands of dollars in restitution and counseling costs. But here's what's most important. All 5 of those students have become advocates for anti-bullying programs in their community service work. Maya smiled slightly. Brittany Walsh, the girl who led the attack on me, now volunteers at a shelter for victims of domestic violence. She told me last month that understanding the impact of her actions on me helped her recognize the trauma that violence causes in all its forms. Jessica Martinez tutors elementary students who have been identified as potential bullying victims, teaching them self-advocacy skills. Chloe Davidson works with a program that provides counseling for teenagers who engage in harmful behavior. She looked directly at several legislators in the front row. This is what real accountability looks like. Not just punishment, but education and rehabilitation that turns former perpetrators into advocates for change. Maya's speech concluded with a call for statewide implementation of comprehensive anti-bullying programs and increased funding for schools to address harassment before it escalates to violence. The standing ovation that followed lasted for nearly 5 minutes. After her speech, Maya was surrounded by students, teachers, and parents who wanted to share their own experiences and ask for advice. Among the crowd was a familiar face, Brittany Walsh, who had been attending the conference as part of her community service requirement. Maya, Brittany said when she finally reached her, I just wanted to say that your speech was incredible, and I wanted you to know that the work I'm doing at the shelter has really opened my eyes to how much damage bullying can cause. Maya studied her former tormentor, noting the genuine remorse in her eyes and the humble way she carried herself now. How are you doing, Brittany? Really? It's been hard, Brittany admitted. Losing my friends, my position on the cheerleading squad, my college plans. But I think I needed to lose those things to understand what really matters. She paused. I hurt you. And I hurt a lot of other people over the years. I can't undo that, but I'm trying to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Maya nodded. That's all any of us can do. Learn from our mistakes and try to make things better. As Brittany walked away, Maya reflected on how much had changed since that terrible day in Mrs. Henderson's classroom. The girl who had once terrorized an entire school was now working to protect other vulnerable students. The administration that had initially ignored harassment was now leading the state in anti-bullying initiatives. And Maya herself had transformed from a victim into an advocate whose story was inspiring change across the entire educational system. David Kim appeared at her side, having attended the conference as Maya's guest and moral support. "So what's next?" he asked. "You've conquered high school bullying, given speeches to state legislators, and turned your attackers into advocates. What does Maya Chen do for an encore?" Maya laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Well, I've been accepted to Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service. I'm thinking about studying international conflict resolution. Following in your father's footsteps? In a way. But instead of military solutions to conflicts, I want to focus on diplomatic ones, preventing violence before it starts rather than responding to it after the fact." David grinned. "Somehow, I think the world's bullies have no idea what's coming for them." Maya looked out at the crowd of educators and students still mingling after her speech, many of them discussing plans to implement similar programs in their own schools and communities. She thought about all the students who might be spared the kind of attack she had endured simply because someone had been willing to speak up and demand change. "You know what the best part is?" Maya said to David as they prepared to leave the Capitol building. "What's that?" "I never wanted to be the center of attention. I just wanted to be left alone to finish school and move on with my life. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself and everyone else is refuse to stay silent when something is wrong." Maya Chen walked out of the state capitol building that day, knowing that she had kept a promise she had made to herself in that empty chemistry lab months earlier. She had shown Brittany Walsh and everyone else who thought they could attack the quiet new girl that sometimes the quietest people are the ones with the most powerful voices. And sometimes, when you strike back not for revenge but for justice, you don't just protect yourself, you protect everyone who comes after you. The girl who had once tried so hard to remain invisible had become a beacon of hope for students across the entire state. Her story would be told in schools, conferences, and training programs for years to come, a reminder that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to do what's right even when you're terrified. Maya Chen had learned that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with fists or weapons, but with documentation, determination, and the refusal to accept that bullying is just a normal part of growing up. She had struck back, and in doing so, had struck a blow against every bully who thought they could hurt someone weaker than themselves without consequences. Her hair had grown back, but more importantly, she had grown into someone who would never again allow herself or anyone else to be victimized without a fight. The quiet new girl was gone forever. In her place stood a young woman who knew her own power and wasn't afraid to use it when justice demanded it. And that, Maya thought as she headed home to prepare for her next chapter, was the best possible ending to a story that had begun with such darkness and fear. Sometimes getting your hair cut against your will wasn't really about hair at all. Sometimes it was about power, respect, and the recognition that every person has the right to feel safe and valued. Maya Chen had learned that lesson the hard way, but she had made sure that thousands of other students would never have to learn it the same way she did. That was her victory. That was her revenge. That was her gift to every quiet kid who just wanted to survive high school without being broken by the people who thought cruelty was a form of entertainment. She had struck back, and the world was better for it.